Kharkiv under fire. Peace talks stalled by brutal strikes.
It is Sunday, January 25, 2026.
Subscribe to Defense Reports, your go-to source for timely, in-depth military and defense reports. I'm Alex. Join me with Arya in the latest podcast by Defense Report for a sharp, no-nonsense breakdown of the latest in global defense news, military technology, and strategic developments. And today...
Well, today we have to cover the absolute chaos of the last 24 hours.
It has been a very long, very dark night for Ukraine. The reports are still coming in, but the picture is just grim.
We could say that again. I mean, while diplomats were sitting in these, air-conditioned rooms in Abu Dhabi, Russia launched a massive, and I mean massive, coordinated air offensive
against Kiev and Kharkiv, the two largest cities.
It's a brutal negotiation tactic, isn't it?
Classic one. Talk peace at the table, wage total war on the ground.
And that is exactly what we need to unpack today. This isn't just going to be a list of strikes. Our mission on this deep dive is to connect the dots between really three critical elements.
First, the sheer scale of these drone swarms. We are talking numbers we just haven't seen in a long time. Second, this mysterious anchorage formula that keeps getting mentioned.
And third, and this is a big one, a potential game changer arriving from France, a piece of technology that might finally give Ukraine a sword to match its shield.
Exactly. So we've got a lot to get through. We need to talk about why Russia is trying to slice the Ukrainian grid into these little energy islands right now.
And that new French drone, the Rodeur 330, can it really hunt on its own 500 kilometers behind the lines?
And yeah, what on earth is this anchorage formula? What was really discussed in Alaska? And why is the Kremlin demanding a full retreat from the Donbass just to start talking?
It's a tangled web where the kinetic war and the diplomatic war are colliding head-on. Let's start with the immediate reality on the ground, the last 24 hours.
Let's do it. So, the longest night, you've been scrubbing the numbers. How bad was it?
It was saturation, plain and simple. This wasn't a skirmish. On the night of January 24th into the 25th, Russia launched 375 drones.
375?
Yeah.
In one night? I mean, that has to be approaching record levels.
It is, and crucially, it wasn't just one type of drone. It was a complex mix. You had the high-end Shaheds with the heavy warheads, but they were mixed in with these cheaper Gerbera and Itomas types.
The decoys, right? The ones made of plywood to light up the radar.
Exactly. And they didn't come alone. They were accompanied by 21 missiles, including 2 of the hypersonic Zircons.
Zircons. Those are the ones that are just nearly impossible to stop.
Precisely. They fly at Mach 8 or 9. By the time your radar sees them, they're already impacting. So, imagine you're an air defense operator near Kyiv. You have almost 400 targets on your scope.
Wow.
Some are lethal, some are foam, and somewhere in that mess are 2 hypersonic missiles screaming in. It's a nightmare scenario.
That is an overwhelming amount of metal in the sky.
It is. And here's the thing. Ukrainian air defense is incredibly good. They destroyed 87 out of one specific wave of 102 drones. That's a great interception rate.
But it's a numbers game.
It's a numbers game. When you launch nearly 400 projectiles, the goal isn't just to hit things. The goal is to empty the defenders' magazines. You want them to run out of interceptors.
And unfortunately, some did get through. I want to zoom in on Kharkiv because the reports from there they're just heartbreaking.
Kharkiv took the brunt of it. The city is so close to the border, the reaction time is almost zero.
And these weren't military targets. This was a 2.5-hour raid. 25 Shaheds swarming the city center. And look at the target list. A shopping center.
A high-rise residential building right next to it.
A dormitory for displaced people. People who've already lost their homes once.
And a maternity hospital. Perhaps the most horrific of all.
A maternity hospital. It screams terror, doesn't it? We're hearing up to 30 injured, including a child and a pregnant woman. An 80-year-old woman in the Kievsky district.
And we have to mention the tactic they used because it really speaks to the intent here. The reports are mentioning the double tap strike.
Right. Explain that. It's a gruesome term.
A double tap is a calculated way to kill rescuers. You strike a target, say a building, you wait maybe 15-20 minutes.
Just enough time for help to arrive?
Just enough time for firefighters, paramedics, even just neighbors to run into the rubble, and then you strike the exact same spot again.
You're weaponizing their compassion.
Exactly. It's designed specifically to kill the people trying to save lives. It's a war crime, frankly.
It's chilling. And while that was happening in Kharkiv, Kyiv was also under siege.
The descriptions are so vivid. Witnesses talking about these orange flashes lighting up the sky over the skyscrapers. That's the air defense engaging the drones.
But the volume was just too high.
It was. and the result is darkness. We have reports that 1.2 million properties nationwide are without power this morning.
And in Kyiv alone, 800,000 households are in the dark.
And you have to remember the weather. It's January. The temperatures are between -10 and -20 degrees Celsius.
That's lethal cold.
It is. There was a specific report from the Troishkina district, a huge northeastern suburb. 600 buildings lost heat, water, and power, all at once. Imagine being in that high-rise, it's -20, and everything just stops.
This brings us to the overall strategy, what you call coercive kineticism. Break that down.
It means using physical force kinetic energy to force a political outcome. It's a synchronized attempt to freeze the population into submission. And look at the timing. It's happening exactly while peace talks are going on.
The message is, agree to our terms or freeze.
That's the message, which leads us right into the strategy of exhaustion.
Okay, so this is about the grid itself. You mentioned they're creating energy islands. What does that mean?
It's a shift in tactics. Last winter, they hit the big generation plants. Now they're targeting the substations, the high-voltage lines that connect cities like Kharkiv to the national grid.
They're trying to slice the grid apart.
Precisely. If you sever those connections, you turn a city into an electrical island. So even if there's plenty of power in western Ukraine,
You can't get to Kharkiv.
it can't get there. You isolate the city without surrounding it with tanks. You surround it with darkness.
It's a siege by infrastructure. But the flip side of this is the human infrastructure. The resilience of these Ukrainian energy workers is it's unbelievable.
They are the unsung heroes of this war. I was just reading about a pilot project from Deputy PM Alexei Kuleba.
What's that?
They're giving special financial aid to emergency workers who operate under shelling. Because they aren't waiting for the all clear. They're out there fixing lines while the sirens are still wailing.
It's incredible.
Look at the Desnyansky district. A massive attack, and yet they restored power to 88,000 homes almost immediately. It shows the Ukrainian human element is adapting faster than the Russians expected.
It's a race, isn't it? Russian destruction versus Ukrainian repair.
Yeah.
But there's a darker concept here, the zero line.
This is the suspected strategic goal for the Northeast, for Kharkiv and Sumy. The intensity suggests they want to make the region physically uninhabitable.
Not occupy it, but make it unlivable.
Exactly. If there's no heat, no water, people have to leave. That creates a massive wave of refugees, putting strain on the rest of Ukraine, on Europe. It's weaponized migration.
Okay, let's pivot. From the brutal war on the ground to the war in the conference rooms, the Abu Dhabi talks.
Yes, the talks.
So while all this is happening, you have high-level delegations meeting in the UAE. You have Ukraine's Rustem Umerov, Russia's GRU Admiral Igor Kostyukov, and for the U.S., Trump's envoys, Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner.
It's quite the cast of characters, and these talks concluded on January 24th, literally as these missiles were being prepared for launch.
And the disconnect in the messaging is just wild. U.S. officials are calling the talks upbeat and constructive.
Which is just jarring when you hear Ukraine's foreign minister calling it another night of Russian terror. It's hard to feel upbeat when your hospitals are being bombed.
So what is this Anchorage formula that keeps coming up?
This is the mystery of the week. It refers back to that U.S.-Russia summit in Alaska in August 2025.
Okay.
The Kremlin is basically claiming there was some secret formula for peace agreed upon between Putin and Trump.
And what do they claim this formula entails?
The demand is huge. They're demanding the full withdrawal of Ukrainian forces from all of the Donbass, all of Luhansk and Donetsk as a precondition.
Wait. Not just the territory they currently hold, they want Ukraine to just hand over the rest, the parts they've been defending for years.
Correct. They want Ukraine to voluntarily retreat from fortified positions in places like Kramatorsk.
That sounds like a complete non-starter for Kyiv.
Absolutely. No Ukrainian leader could survive that. But by calling it the Anchorage formula, Russia is trying to imply that the U.S. already agreed to this.
Ah, I see. They're trying to drive a wedge between Washington and Kyiv. Your allies already sold you out.
It's psychological warfare and diplomacy. And yet, they've agreed to meet again on February 1st, so the door is technically open.
The door is open, but the hallway is being bombed.
A very apt metaphor.
Okay, let's get to some good news for Ukraine. The tech war. We've talked about shields, now let's talk about swords. This new French delivery.
The Rodeur 330, this is significant.
Tell us about it. Why is it a game changer?
It's a long-range attack drone. The specs are what matter. It's got a 500-kilometer range and can loiter for 5 hours. But the crucial part is that it's highly resistant to GPS jamming.
500 kilometers. That puts a lot of Russian territory within reach.
It does, and that's the strategic shift. Ukraine has mostly been playing defense, catching incoming missiles. With the Rodeur 330, they can switch to offensive defense.
So they can hit the airfields where these bombers are taking off, the fuel depots.
Exactly. You stop the arrow by hitting the archer. If you can degrade their logistics deep inside Russia, the pressure on Kharkiv drops. That's why it's a sword to match the Patriot shield.
But, of course, Russia is adapting to these Molniya 2 drones.
Yes, this is a worrying development.
Yep.
The Molniya 2 is a cheap, mass-produced drone, but now they're equipping them with Starlink terminals.
Starlink? I thought that was restricted.
It's supposed to be, but they're getting them through illicit networks. And by putting a Starlink dish on a cheap drone, they get a high-speed, real-time video feed that ignores local jamming.
It turns a dumb bomb into a smart, long-range guided missile.
It does. It's a constant technological arms race.
But there's one more Ukrainian innovation I found fascinating. This kill zone near Kupiansk.
This is something out of a military futurist's textbook.
Yeah.
They're using FPV drones to create this layered denial zone.
How did it work?
They've established a 20 to 25 kilometer deep zone where essentially no Russian vehicle can survive. A truck, a tank. If it enters that zone, a drone swarm finds it.
25 kilometers.
Yeah.
That paralyzes their logistics.
It does. And then closer in, within a 1 kilometer zone of the front, they're targeting individual infantry.
So nothing can move.
Nothing moves.
Yeah.
It explains why, despite all their air superiority, Russian ground forces are struggling to take tiny villages. They literally can't move without getting hit.
It's like a swarm of bees protecting the hive.
That's a great analogy. It forces a stalemate on the ground, even while the air war escalates.
So, bringing this all together, we have this massive strategic tension.
It's a race. On one side, Russia's strategy of exhaustion, freeze the civilians, break their will. On the other, Ukraine's strategy of integration, bringing in new tech, like the Rodeur, holding the line with innovation.
And all this while men in suits are talking about formulas in Abu Dhabi.
It really begs the question, and this is the provocative thought I want to leave our listeners with.
Let's hear it.
If Russia is willing to launch its largest attack of the winter during what the U.S. calls constructive talks, is the diplomacy a real path to peace? Or is it just a smokescreen? Are they just talking to buy time to freeze Ukraine into surrender?
That is the question. Is the pen mightier than the sword, or is it just a distraction while the sword gets sharpened? Looking at the dark windows in Kyiv tonight, the answer feels pretty grim.
Indeed.
You've been listening to Defense Report by Alex and Arya, where we analyze the latest in military strategy, global defense, and advanced weaponry. Subscribe to Defense Reports, your go-to source for timely, in-depth military and defense reports. We'll catch you next time.